The fact that my partner was offered heroin within 10 minutes of being on the wing, that shocked me. The place is swamped with drugs. Staff members were telling me this place is unsafe, it's toxic. It is a rotting, festering cesspit.
Georgia Swift once sent people to HMP Winchester when she was a local magistrate, a role she took on after 2 decades in the criminal justice system, working as a probation service officer, court clerk and psychotherapist. What made you become a magistrate and how did you find that?
I could see that the bench needed people that had good life experience, people that had experience of working with the issues that presented in court more often, addiction being a primary thing that we saw repeatedly.
And a different voice, different experience, which is what they're after.
Absolutely, yeah, you know, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
And that life experience was to give her a very different perspective on prison, when her partner, who doesn't want to be named, was remanded at Winchester, accused of assault during a period of psychosis. Even she, part of the system, wasn't prepared for what he told her it was really like.
It was grotty, it was dirty, it was crumbling. Men were catching rats in buckets in their cells and then having to keep rats under buckets. I'd be on the telephone in the evening and you'd hear people screaming because a rat had run along.
The Ministry of Justice denied the prison has a rat infestation. Georgia says an even bigger concern than conditions is, in her view, that the prison is a dangerous place on many fronts.
Within the first 10 minutes of being on the wing, he's offered heroin, and it becomes very apparent that there is a big problem with spice in the prison. He was taken from a single cell and put in a cell with a spice user who was actively smoking spice in his presence.
All of this was terrifying for Georgia and her partner, who's a recovering drug addict, reliant on an opiate-blocking injection, which she says the jail initially failed to provide. Practice Plus Group, responsible for healthcare in the jail, told us it takes substance misuse needs extremely seriously. Georgia says drugs were everywhere, and she claims everyone knew where many of them came from.
Very soon it became apparent by talking to some of the staff how big the problem was in there. And staff were telling me that staff were taking the drugs in there. Staff were telling me, a social visitor, that their colleagues were taking the drugs in there and that the governor didn't care.
And what did you make of that?
I guess I was pretty speechless to start with, and then it became, you know, just a normal thing. They would come and find me whilst I was queuing up for the visit and tell me what else had been going on there.
And what else was something extraordinary.
I had, you know, family members coming to me on visits concerned that staff were paying other prisoners to commit violence against their family members.
The staff?
The staff.
And how were they paying them?
In spice, in drugs, contraband, prohibited items.
To carry out assaults on other prisoners?
To carry out assaults on other prisoners, to keep them quiet, to shut them up.
I mean, that's really dangerous, isn't it?
It's very dangerous. You know, I don't like to use the word corrupt lightly, but I think that's what we're looking at.
She says she complained officially both to those inside and beyond the prison about drugs, healthcare and violence. Often there was no reply, and rarely, she says, any concrete action. Prison inspectors agree this is a prison being overwhelmed by drugs and violence, encased in filth and neglect. Problems which have seen it join a growing list of prisons deemed unable to properly function. It's one of the most unsafe in the country, and the explanations for what has gone wrong are pretty familiar. As to who is to blame, the inspectorate is clear. These are systemic failings overseen by the Prison Service and the Ministry of Justice. The question is, what will be done about them and when? More money was promised for the criminal justice system in the recent budget, but campaigners say it's not enough and it's targeted at the wrong thing.
You do not solve what everyone recognises is years and years of underinvestment in prisons by continuing to underinvest. There is some money in the new budget for more investment in staff, for new probation officers. There is significantly more money in the budget for building new prisons, and that's where I think the government is wrong-headed. That money would much better be directed to the current prison estate and to investing in probation and in community alternatives to prison, which we know not only cost a whole lot less than prison, but also are much more successful in terms of reducing reoffending.
Our request for an interview was declined, but in a statement, the prisons minister, Lord Timpson, said the situation at Winchester illustrates the scale of the crisis the government inherited. Prisons like HMP Winchester must not be allowed to become breeding grounds for further crime. Staff are already working hard to drive the improvements needed, and we will publish an action plan in the coming weeks to support them in their efforts. When you look back at your role as a magistrate, you will have sent people to Winchester. What do you feel about that now?
You know, sitting in the adult crime court and remanding or sentencing people to custody in Winchester, I couldn't, with my own ethical compass, I couldn't do that.
No matter what they'd done?
No matter what they'd done. I couldn't send anyone there and sleep well. When magistrates sit there, they think, oh, you know, people can go to prison and they'll get clean from drugs and they'll have rehabilitation and they'll have, you know, they can do a course. It's not like that. It's not like that.
Her partner is now out and rebuilding his life, but she's determined to keep fighting for the prisoners still inside, in a prison she says is no longer fit for purpose.